Greetings, Neuro Ninjas. Can I first of all apologise for my hair? Like the rest of you, unable to get near a barber. So who knows? I'll look like, as the days and weeks progress, I'll probably look increasingly like I'm travelling back in time to the 1970s. And I'm sure a mullet is a really cool hairstyle. We'll find out in June, won't we? So I'm responding really to a set of questions that I've had from parents, colleagues actually working in schools, and students around the kind of sort of bleh feeling that we've got every day when we're in lockdown. A kind of lack of motivation, a kind of what's the blinking point feeling, and the kind of downsides of that. So I wanted to talk really during this week, because our focus in the 12 Rocks at 3 o'clock every day, the 12 Rocks over 12 weeks. We're in week 4 now, so we're looking at mindfulness and mind wandering, and I've put them together for a reason, because they're both connected. The mindfulness circuit, the task positive network, is just behind our forehead. You've heard me talk about the prefrontal cortex before. That's the area of the brain that's our newest, swankiest bit, and its job is a focus, concentration, attention, and it's effortful. Those circuits, whatever they're doing, requires a lot of effort, because not only is it about concentrating, but it's also about dampening other circuits. Directly behind the prefrontal cortex is the limbic system, the anterior cingulate cortex, and structures there are part of something called the default mode network, or the mind wandering network. So that's the place we go when we're not concentrating. When we're not concentrating, it's not like our minds are empty. They're wandering around and going over things and kind of processing things. So let's focus on that feeling of bleh I talked about, that kind of lack of motivation. So basically, we need to understand that our brain is a parliament of neural circuits, managed for most of a day by a fairly sorted out prefrontal cortex. We notice that parliament can get a little bit rowdy in the evening, when we are more likely to give up on some of the promises we've made to ourselves. Like, we're more likely to eat foods that aren't good for us, shop, watch TV late into the night, all the things that involve our prefrontal cortex managing ourselves and organising. So this parliament of all our neural circuits, they can get in a bit of an argument when we're having a really tricky time, and particularly when our prefrontal cortex is kind of offline. So in the evenings, we're much more likely to give up on certain promises we've made to ourselves, as an example. So we've got circuits in our mind wandering network, and some neuroscientists anyway, talk about the mind wandering network like the social brain. It's the area of our brain that does a lot of second guessing about what other people are going to do. And there's quite a good, healthy bunch of research, big block of research, that says that default mode network, that mind wandering network, it's the social problem solving network. So it's going to be churning through what other people have done or what they might likely do in the future. And deep in there's a bunch of circuits that do different things. One of those circuits is a kind of judgment circuit. It's a kind of careful watcher of the world circuit, particularly other people's behaviour. It's making judgments about other people's behaviour. Are they trustworthy? Do they mean what they say? Do they follow up? Do they do things that they've said they've done? It constantly judges other people, and in order to judge other people, it kind of faces both ways. It looks out into the world and judges other people's behaviour, but it also looks inward and judges our own responses against, the promises we make to ourselves about doing certain things, etc. Now, one of the issues that we can face in this moment of structurelessness during the course of lockdown is that we're doing less than we ordinarily do. We're seeing less people, we're doing less schoolwork, we're doing less work, we're doing less caring, we're doing a lot less of some of the things that we ordinarily do. So that circuit, used to a certain level of response, activity, productivity from us, looking at our own behaviour, can start making some judgments about our behaviour that aren't particularly positive. We can start having a go at ourselves at the end of an unproductive day. We can actually find ourselves in a conversation where we're being judged harshly by those internal circuits. And this is where mindfulness comes in, because mindfulness isn't about turning those circuits off. There are a whole bunch of circuits throughout our mind wandering network, and they're doing a whole bunch of different processes. In fact, in seminar 4, when we're looking at Through Anxiety and Beyond, we talk about the cognitive courtroom, which is that mind-wandering network. Lots of circuits with lots of different jobs. But that judgment circuit, in times like this, when it sees us doing less than we ordinarily would, it can be particularly harsh and beat us up, have a go at us, go around and around. And you may well find yourself after a day where you're doing less, necessarily less in some respects, because that's what's required of us in this process of isolation and social distancing. You can find yourself feeling guilty, having a go at yourself and beating yourself up. So the solution to all of this is to raise our awareness of the chatter that goes on in our heads. And that's what mindfulness is about. In fact, it's not just about raising our awareness. What we've seen from brain scans is slowly but surely developing mindfulness means that the prefrontal cortex ability to connect with that mind-wandering network becomes more extensive. And certain areas that are often very closely connected to each other become a little more disconnected from each other, in the sense that there's a bit of a gap between the thought and the kind of action or immediate habitual response. So mindfulness gives us a bit more space in order to allow those thoughts to bubble up, but for us not to invest in them. And so it's really important to be aware that our brain is an arguing parliament with different circuits designed to do different jobs. And all the time our prefrontal cortex is in charge, it's kind of fine. But when it's not, when things are difficult, when the prefrontal cortex is engaged in being worried about the world or a whole bunch of other things, it can lead to this kind of argument going on in the back of the brain. So that's what mindfulness does. It enables us to become aware of this argument and not to ignore it, but just to allow it to come through and just go, okay, so my judgment circuits are having a bit of a pop at me, not to invest ourselves in that conversation. So, I am noticing that I am being harsh on myself rather than I am being harsh on myself and just having a go at ourselves. We need to create that step. And so mindfulness enables us to build that circuitry that gives us some strength to respond with agility to those thoughts and feelings, rather than just react and chase them around our heads. The danger, of course, of chasing around our heads is we reinforce the neural circuitry that started them in the first place. Anyway, thanks for listening. This is the 3 p.m. rock slot for this week. There'll be some other videos during the course of the week. Thanks for listening. See you all soon.